We are struggling. Whether it be exams, projects, grades, drama, money, or any other kind of burden, we're struggling. And we have been for a long time. And at some point, everyone needs a rest. And we all do that in different ways. We'll do things we enjoy, like watching movies, reading, exercising, or playing video games. And to me, gaming is one of the best ways to de-stress and recharge while simultaneously stimulating your brain, learning something new, and experiencing a story you'll never forget. Some background on myself: I've been playing video games since I was 6 years old, and I vividly remember my first experience. I came downstairs one day, saw my brother, who was ironically about to leave for college, playing some kind of game on the TV, and he noticed me watching and asked if I wanted to join. So I did, and I was introduced to what would become my passion, and that game was Halo 2 on the original Xbox, and to this day I still play it. My love for games would only grow over the years, and it would become my zen, my go-to form of entertainment. And during high school, I experienced one of the worst periods in my life when my parents divorced, my grades fell, and I experienced heartbreak for the first time. And it was around this same time I decided to play a infamous game known as Dark Souls. And up until that point, I barely knew what it was and only ever heard about it because of its notorious difficulty. And being the pro that I was, I decided to have a go. And the game destroyed me. Never had I experienced a game of such an unforgiving nature. I died, and I died until eventually I deemed the game just not for me and gave up. I took a break for weeks and pondered my experience, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way I felt playing that game. I felt weak, like just an ordinary person taking on nigh invincible godlike beings, and I had no superpowers, no overpowered weapons, no divine grace, nothing. And most importantly, I had little help. I was alone. And despite this, while struggling, I managed to defeat several bosses that at first glance seemed unbeatable. And after completing such a feat, I no longer felt weak and helpless. I felt powerful, despite dying more times than I could count. That satisfying, overwhelming feeling of satisfaction I had after defeating a boss that destroyed me for 2 hours straight ignited my will to struggle forward until eventually I gave up, defeated. And after a couple weeks, I decided to give it another go and merely changed my mindset throughout the game. I would take it slow, think through the obstacles ahead of me, and ponder each death to find the mistake I made. And when I stopped throwing myself at a wall and began to think about how my deaths occurred, I realized that just about all my deaths were completely my fault. The game was not unfair. It was just me refusing to learn from my mistakes. After realizing this, I took the game on in a completely new way, seeking to analyze every aspect of the environment, enemy movements, sounds, and my own character's abilities to find the best way to conquer each obstacle. I would take the pain in stride, coming back to each encounter with new strategy and knowledge every time. After this, I began to conquer seemingly insurmountable challenges posed for me and found that, much like in life, failure only made me stronger until eventually I felled the final boss. And I cried. I cried when I finished Dark Souls for the first time. Alongside the torment that I had received from the unfortunate events of high school was the pride that I finished one of the most notoriously difficult games ever made. And up until that point, I felt inadequate, irresponsible, responsible, and ultimately like a failure. But when those credits played, I experienced the most beautiful gratification I've ever received. I cried because I did the impossible, completely on my own, without any help, and felt that I could surpass any challenge. In fact, the game, I would go as far as to say, changed my philosophy on life And after that, I saw every pain as a learning experience, an opportunity to be better. And suddenly, the world seemed less grim as I began to view all my demons as obstacles to be overcome rather than torture to simply endure. I overcame that difficult time, and I attribute this in large part to Dark Souls and the team at FromSoftware. My story about Souls is just one example. It's been well documented that challenging games like Dark Souls help people through difficult times and has even aided sufferers of depression and anxiety disorders, if you can believe it. And some have even stated that games like Dark Souls have saved their lives. If you do a quick search on YouTube, you'll find countless video essays on how Souls games have helped people through difficult times. Game designers are wizards of engagement. They have mastered the art of pulling people of all ages into virtual environments, having them work toward meaningful goals, persevere in the face of multiple failures, and celebrate the rare moments of triumph after successfully completing challenging tasks, wrote American psychologist researchers Isabel Granick, Adam Lobel, and Rutger Engels. Video games are a powerful medium not only because of their enjoyment, but also their benefit to the player. And to illustrate this point, I researched professional studies conducted on the effects of video games. And a study conducted by American psychologists in 2014 found that video games improve several aspects of mental health, some including emotional and motivational. Video games improve their players' levels of motivation, which generally involves self-confidence, optimism, and general willpower. Although playing games is often considered a frivolous pastime, gaming environments may actually cultivate a persistent, optimistic motivational style, and this motivational style, in turn, may generalize to school and work contexts. It certainly did for me. And additionally, a cross-sectional study conducted by researchers Jen Hazel, Yoon Kim, and Susanna Every Palmer for the Australasian Psychiatry Journal found that games improve mental health and well-being. Perceived psychological benefits from video games were correlated with self-determination theory domains, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and with well-being theory. That immense feeling of satisfaction I mentioned when defeating a difficult boss is a term known as fiero, which is a French word for intense pride after overcoming great adversity, and is a sensation that many gamers like myself are well familiar with. It has further been suggested that some of the most intense, positive emotional experiences are triggered in the context of playing video games, according to American psychologists. And as a gamer, one feeling I know well is immersion, which American psychologist discusses as well. They call it flow or transportation, another positive emotional experience described by gamers during which they are immensely immersed in an intrinsically rewarding activity that elicits a high sense of control while simultaneously evoking a loss of self-consciousness. I attest that these flow experiences are not only indicative of a good game, but also moments of hyper-focus on the task at hand when all neurons are firing in hopes of achieving your goal. In psychology, flow experiences have been repeatedly linked to a host of positive outcomes for adolescents, including commitment and achievement in high school. Additionally, playing games also lessens the effects of mental illnesses, as mentioned before, like depression. This is due to the emotional rewards that games deliver, especially those earned from a difficult task. And American psychologists found that the pretend context of video games may be real enough to make the accomplishment of goals matter, but also safe enough to practice controlling or modulating negative emotions in the service of those goals. Adaptive regulation strategies such as acceptance, problem solving, and reappraisal have repeatedly been linked to less negative effect, more social support, and lower levels of depressive symptoms. When I have had a rough day, I tend to go back to my childhood. I tend to play Halo, actually. Nothing sets a fire in my heart like hearing the beautiful Gregorian chant of the main theme and the rush of memories that it brings. In the context of higher education and life at large, we will all struggle, but we need not do it alone. There will be moments of respite which come in many forms, and games, at least to me, are one of them. If you feel like you're going through a time of distress, it's okay. There will always be people who know your pain and can help, but in time, we all need relief. If you have not seriously tried playing video games, I could not recommend it enough. Speaking from personal experience, games are the reason I am where I am today. They've shaped my life and the relationships I've made throughout. We all deal with adversities in different ways, and I implore gaming to be one of yours. As Laurentius from Dark Souls says, be safe, friend, and don't you dare go hollow.